I don't think we have a good enough immigration system, which brings me to the immigration bill.
I think it's going to be I think that's well, I'm not for it, I'll tell you, Sean. I'm writing a column today, and I think, look, you take a look at, I've just reread the Republican platform. We're going to stand up against amnesty because that will cause people to rush to the border and because it rewards law-breaking. I don't know what has changed other than the fear in the Republican Party that the Hispanics voted against them because they only got 27%, because they're against amnesty. I don't believe that's the reason. But, I mean, this cutting and running that we're seeing on the part of Republicans on a lot of issues, I don't think it's very appealing.
You know, I've interviewed a lot of different people about this particular bill. I spent a lot of time on this program talking to Marco Rubio, somebody like Rand Paul, Jeb Bush, and a lot of other players in all of this. And when you look at what they're saying, you know, like, for example, Marco Rubio will tell you if the bill becomes law, it does not grant legal status to anyone that's here on day one. No illegal immigrant is rewarded with anything. On day one, the clock starts running on the Department of Homeland Security, meeting the mandatory security triggers, implementing an effective border security plan, mandating employment verification, full implementation of an exit system. 6 months later, after the border security and border fence plans are created, funded, and initiated, undocumented workers will be able to come forward, submit and pass background checks, be fingerprinted, pay fines, pay taxes, prove gainful employment, go to the back of the line, prove they have had a physical presence in the U.S. since 2012, among other measures. If they meet those requirements, they earn a temporary status, allowing them to work. If they don't, they get deported.
Well, let me.
I'm just telling you what they're saying.
I know, but let me challenge it a little bit. I think what's happening is, look, Barack Obama, President of the United States, he doesn't have a right to negotiate as to whether or not he's going to defend the borders of the United States. He has taken an oath to defend the borders of the states of the American Union. And the idea that Barack Obama or the Democrats are demanding that in exchange for doing their constitutional duty, the Republicans should violate the principled position they took is, to me, an outrage, and the Republicans ought to stand firm against it. Secondly, Sean, I've got to disagree. As soon as this bill passes, every illegal alien in this country is going to know he's not going to be apprehended, he's not going to be sent back, there's not going to be going after the businesses that hired him, and they're basically home free. And when that happens, that message is going to go out to the world, and we will have, in effect, the second de facto amnesty, which will not be stopped then. And then you're going to get another stampede to the American border, and the people around the world will say the American people are incapable of defending the borders of the United States. If we want to go there, get in there, keep your nose clean, and you can become a citizen. You can cut right ahead of the line because millions and millions have already done it.
Let me ask you this, because you're really talking about even a third wave. You're 100% right. They have a duty and obligation to control our borders, and the laws of this land already demand that they do it, but they don't follow the law. I mean, when Arizona passed their law, Pat, all they did was take language from the federal law because they weren't doing their job.
Well, sure,
and you're right. What the Republicans are doing is they're saying, all right, we're going to have mandatory triggers, and then we will deal with the 11 million people. So my question to you is, you don't think there's never been that I can think of, a movement of Republicans to say you didn't respect our laws or sovereignty, you have to go home. Nobody's done it.
The Republican Party under George Bush, you know, Sean, when I first ran in 1991 in California, we had to fight to get into the platform that we need to put structures on the border. Duncan Hunter Sr., he's a wonderful congressman. He took me down there, and they had these corrugated stuff they were using in Vietnam for runways and stuff. They're putting a fence. 5,000 people walking in every weekend. You know, we begged the President of the United States, Mr. President, our country is being invaded. You may not like me, but you got an obligation to defend the border.
I agree with you, but nobody's done it. And
but then we only had about 3 million illegals in the country. Now we got 12.
Okay, but now the question is, what do you? If we were to follow the laws that we presently have and don't pass an immigration bill, you still have 11 or 12 million people that are in here illegally. And
why do you have to do anything?
Well, I'm saying,
what is this nonsense? They're in the shadows. But due respect, they ought to be in the shadows. They've broken the law.
No, but I'm asking you, but even right, they didn't respect our laws or sovereignty. So what happens when they get in the system in some way?
Well, look, there's no doubt that I'm sure when I drive by some of these construction workers, and you drive by folks, a lot of them, they're hardworking people. I don't deny that. Many of them are very friendly people. I don't know whether folks are legal or illegal, but do nothing. You don't have to bribe. I mean, you don't have to give up your principled position.
I'm not saying that. I'm asking
I don't say you, but I say that the Republican Party, in order to get Barack Obama, says to get him to do his duty and defend our border.
Do his job in the first place. No, I think you're making perfect sense. I mean, I think I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. But let's say somebody gets arrested and they're here illegally. You know, and I know that we don't have the stomach in this country. Nobody wants to send them home.
Well, this is the fundamental point I'm writing about. You know, Sean, I wrote a book on this, and back in 1953, 54.
By the way, was this one of your controversial books, or was this one of your less controversial books?
I think it's one of them that's been burned. But the story of Dwight Eisenhower. They had thousands of illegal Mexicans coming in. Suddenly, there were 1 million. General Joseph Swing. He was the Joseph May Swing. Went right down to the border, was deporting them by bus and ship, and 90% of the illegal entries were stopped by the end of the Eisenhower administration. That was an unapologetic administration. It said, look, they may be nice people. They don't belong here. They broke in. They're not going to stay. They're going home. That's exactly the country.
Okay. Do you think that that there's enough people in the country that would support that, saying you broke our laws, you didn't respect our sovereignty, you have to go home?
I think there are enough that would support them, but there's no doubt those folks are diminishing in number, and political correctness has wormed its way, I'll say, into the heart and soul of the Republican Party, and many of them won't even stand up and say these folks are illegal and they got to go back.
So I think you've given us. I think you're explaining the foundation of where this deal came from. I think the Republicans are saying, all right, to prevent a third wave, we've got to get the full border security so it doesn't happen again.
And they're going to say, and Obama, cross our heart and hope to die, we're going to do all this, and we haven't been doing it? They're going to believe them? Let me tell you what's going to happen next. These folks that are on the 10-year path to citizenship, once that's taken care of, the Democrats will say, well, that's outrageous. We ought to cut it to 5 years. Republicans will oppose it, and they say, you all are anti-Hispanic, and then the Republicans will capitulate again.
I got to be honest, I don't disagree with any of that scenario. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a desire to control the borders, and I don't. Sure, and the problem for me, it has nothing to do with people that want to work, Pat. It is the number one national security vulnerability this country has, and nobody's dealing from that standpoint.
It's not only that, Sean. Look, because we have, for better or worse, an enormously generous social welfare system with scores of federal programs for education and health and income support and unemployment support and rent support and all these things, you got half the American people are now federal beneficiaries of one kind or another, and half the American people are paying no income taxes. Now, you legalize 10 or 12 million more illegals. Most of those folks are very poor. They're going to wind up on that welfare system, and your deficit's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. There's no stopping it.
You know, because they're saying now that that's not going to happen, but in the end, then you're going to say you don't want to pay for poor children. They're hungry. You're going to deny them food.
Sure, who's going to deny them food stamps?